Welcome to Berwyn, Illinois, a centennial city with a proud heritage, a center of education and progress, a city of homes and families, a city of beautiful parks and the finest recreation programs and facilities, the very best in safety and security and sound city government. Welcome to Meeting with the Mayor with Mayor Robert J. Lovero.
Thanks to the ABC Committee for inviting me this evening, and also thanks to everybody who's here tonight. When I sit down to try and decide what to say at these meetings, there's so many things that we can talk about. And in my opinion, I tried to highlight some of the things that are important to the folks out there. And there's just so many exciting things going on in Berwyn today that it's hard to try and not bring everything out, but we could be here for the next week if we did that. So I try and be as brief as possible and leave enough room for questions that people may have with respect to what's going on in the city today and what might be happening tomorrow. So what I'm going to basically do is summarize mainly the highlights, but I want to bring out some of the important aspects of what's going on there that affects your everyday life. I've broken them down into 6 basic categories, the first being finances. Basically, we're doing very well. For 2010, to summarize 2010, which is what we're going through now with our simulating our information for our audit, we were about $44.3 million for our revenues. We budgeted $44.7 million, so we're a little low in budgeted revenues by about $400,000. And that was basically, again, due to the state income tax and the lack of the state real estate transfer tax, which unfortunately the housing market has not picked up, and that causes a little problem. But we still held the line pretty good in revenues. We did pretty good in our budgeting process in 2010 so that we weren't that short. But what we were able to do is to control our spending during that period of time, and we did spend approximately $46.9 million, which was above our revenues. However, what we did with our scheduled refinance in October, it added about $2.2 million to our coffers. At the end of 2009, we had a fund, they call it now fund balance. We used to call it fund reserve. Unfortunately, the IGA said we had to change our term, and it's now called fund balance. Our fund balance was only at about $300,000. And as we all know, that's what hurt our city in the past, is that we did not have a fund balance. But with what we did during 2010, we were able to increase that fund balance by another $1.5 million. So we're about $1.8 million in our fund balance, which if you were following the finances through our city for the past 8 to 10, 15 years, we had 0 fund balances. Now at the end of 2010, we're going to be at about 1.8, which was the whole idea behind the scheduled refinances of our bonds and bond restructuring. In our internal service fund, that's where we had a real problem because we inherited a $2.7 million deficit in that fund. What the goal was to do was to reduce that fund so that we can control workers' compensation and liability claims. And actually, during the year of 2010, that $2.7 million deficit, we reduced to $500,000. So by the end of 2011, that internal service fund deficit will be totally eliminated. For the first quarter of 2011, and that's the numbers that we have to date, we are at 25% of the year gone. We've only spent 20% of our allocated budget. So we're holding the line on spending so that we are able to meet the year's budgets. And that 20% spending includes the in excess of $400,000 that we had to spend due to the snowstorm that we experienced just recently. Now we are processing with FEMA, since the president declared an emergency, basically across the United States. We are processing with FEMA recuperation of that $400,000 in funds. And that's been going along rather smoothly as of late. Once we got denied from the county and the president declared, now we're on to that second level. And it looks like we're going to be able to recoup some, if not all of that money. So if we reduced our spending 20% of our 25% allocated for this quarter, we're actually doing very well, because once we recoup that money, we'll even have brought that spending down lower. So I like to thank our finance department in really controlling our spending. John Wysocki does a tremendous job in doing that. And obviously our city administrator, Brian Papps. Brian, with the help of Joe Fitzgerald from the police department, with the help of Bob Schiller from the public works department, with the help of Tony Loretto, who's volunteered his time for us to this date, with several people on board in having various meetings with FEMA and phone conferences in order to recoup some of that money. One of the things that I've heard over the last several months is salaries. People seem to think that the salaries here in Berwyn are sky high and that I was too generous with the unions in negotiating contracts. Well, we've done a comparative study, and actually we had a 2% increase with all our unions over a 3-year period. The only thing that threw that off was the public works contract for 2009, which was put in at 4%. That unfortunately was negotiated before I was here. That was signed before I got here. However, because of the cooperation of the public works as well as all the other unions, we were able to reduce over the 3-year term that to a 2% average. When you compare it with surrounding communities, we are well below the average. For the 3 years prior to us getting here, the average salary increase exceeded the 2% that we averaged out at this point. So I'd like to thank again all our staff, the men and women of our unions, our fire department, our police department, our public works department, and all our AFSCME union employees. Without their cooperation, we would be stuck with some salary raises like some of the surrounding communities have. Just as an example, for the fire department, Oak Park, over a 3-year period, averaged 3.75%. 6.8, yeah. The Berwyn was at 2%. The Cicero, they're still being negotiated, so we couldn't get any numbers out of there. But when you look at a 5-year period, the Oak Park was at 15.5%, Berwyn at 12.5%. And Cicero, again, is at 11% without those 2 years even being negotiated yet. So, once again, the cooperation of the unions really helped us to keep the line on our budget. In addition, as you all are aware, our fire department and I negotiated a paramedic system. We're going to be hiring 12 new people very shortly. The lists are all out. 12 new people, possibly 14 with some retirements, but 12 new people who all have to be now certified as paramedics because we are now manning our own ambulances. And once we did not renew the contract with PSI, which was as the end of May, from June 1st of 2010 to December 31st of 2010, because we hired the Silver Spanners till we got the new employees, we saved over $169,000 in our paramedic services. $169,000. The savings would have been greater had we been able to go back to January 1st. Unfortunately, we still had the PSI contract up until the end of May. The savings will be greater than anticipated, even over a 10-year stretch that we analyzed, because of the state acting and reducing pensions for new employees starting as of January 1st. So the anticipated savings over the stretch of period that we presented at a city council meeting is going to be even greater now because of the pension shifts. What I've also found is that our employees are working harder, our employees are happier, and I believe that when you have the type of cooperation that we have now in City Hall with your employees, you get better services to your residents, and that's always what I've tried to stress, is the residents' services cannot suffer. I go to a lot of different places. I'm a member of the West Central Municipal Conference's executive board. We go to all the different meetings with all the Western Cook County suburbs. And all I ever hear about from our own residents and from those people is praise for our fire department, praise for our police department. You all saw what happened during the snowstorm. In Berwyn, we had some of the cleanest streets from around all of Cook County. What has also brought the attention of Berwyn, we're no longer the sleepy little bedroom community that we all grew up in here. What we are now is a marketing success. And when I go to these conferences, I've got the mayor of Northlake sitting next to me saying, man, you guys are doing terrific. We read about you in magazines, we read about you in papers. And it's those type of comments that let me know that we are doing what we need to do and we're doing what's right for the citizens of Berwyn. We're building Berwyn up to a town that needs to be recognized, and I believe that that's where we're going to go. We have a lot more work to do, no doubt about it, but I believe with the successes that we've had with our employees and our staff that we've really climbed that hump and we're getting to the top of it. I also have to tip my hat, obviously, to my administrative staff, because if it wasn't for them, we'd have some real difficulties around this community. If it wasn't for the hard work and long hours that, say, Brian Pabst, Bob Schiller, John Wysocki, Chief Ritz, Chief O'Halloran, Jim Franks from our IT department, if it wasn't for those hours that these people put in and the dedication they put into their jobs, it would really be disastrous around here. And I'm telling you that these people come to work happy to do their job. One of the important things that I wanted to bring out to you, final note on the paramedic system, is that, as I told you before, the savings for 2010 were about $169,000. We actually saved on what we even budgeted for the Silver Spanner. We saved about $400 and something thousand just on that, because what we budgeted, we were overly cautious, but we had a budget for 5 months of the PSI contract, which kind of spent more than we anticipated, or more than we would have liked, excuse me, because we anticipated the amount. But we actually saved money on that end, in that we actually had a difference of $1,364 for the end of 2010 for what we budgeted between the Silver Spanner and PSI. One of the promises that I made to this community when I was running, and I emphasized it the last time we spoke, and I'm going to emphasize it again, is our police department. One of the promises that I made was that we need to recognize the type of problems that we have in this community. We need to recognize the gang problems, the drug problems, the guns. And I'm going to tell you, just as a brief report right now, that our Detective Bureau, with its refortification when we came in 2009, for 2010 and 11 totals to date, there's been 2,106 cases assigned. Cases cleared, 1,155. 520 felony arrests, 724 misdemeanor arrests. Total evidence property inventoried, 15,310. We have taken, during 2011, 34 handguns off the street, 9 long guns, 10 BB guns. We've removed 703 grams of cannabis, 105,575 grams of cocaine, 565, almost 566 grams of heroin, 1,000 grams of crystal meth. We've seized 28 vehicles. We've recovered in dollars $77,832 during 2011 alone. The total amounts seized through federal cooperation from the DEA and county cooperation through HIDA. Federal monies, $19,675. Through the state, $278,416. That's just money that we took off the street from the gun runners and the drug runners. All that money's not ours. Please don't get excited now. That's not all our money. We will get a portion of it, once the formulas are done through the feds and through the state. But that's money taken off the street so that those people cannot use that money to go out and buy guns and buy drugs. So my hat goes off to Unit Commander Joseph Santangelo, Deputy Joe Drury, and Chief Jim Ritz for allowing us to continue with the amount of manpower that we're putting behind. And what we're trying to do is bring our Detective Bureau up to the state of the art. The City Council has recently passed a couple different items to allow the Detective Bureau to purchase a blood drying chamber, storage equipment for drugs, evidence storage, because we needed to get into the, what century are we in? The 21st century? We needed to upgrade all that at the police station. And our city council has allowed us to do that by giving them the monies that are necessary for us to become a police force in this century. Because we are being recognized, especially by the federal government, the DEA, as a police department that they wish to work with to be here. Unfortunately, they were here through this month. Because of their federal monies, they may not be here with us much longer, but they're capable about the fact that we're able to handle it ourselves. We have new computer technology. They call him the boy genius, Joe Fitzgerald. I don't know if he's out here, but Joe has upgraded the computer technology at the police department to an extent that we're able to do crime analysis patterns. What we are able to do is be able to take all the different crimes in certain areas and you get a pattern off that. With that, they're able to solve crimes easier. They're able to see what the pattern is of some of the burglaries in town so that they're able to concentrate in those areas and obviously catch the culprits. Under Chief Ritz, the police department has a new policy manual, something that's been outdated for over 10 years. They have a new training bulletin. They have performance evaluations that we haven't seen in many years. They have police department committees that sit and talk about what we need to do to upgrade our police department. They've launched the new Berwyn Police website. They've launched the Nixle, which helps you to learn what's going on with the police department or in your areas of your town. We have new school emergency and crisis plans that we worked out with Morton West, District 100, and District 98. So, and Nicole Campbell, our traffic engineer, has been sitting with the school districts to work out, under a grant, to work out safe walk to school programs. She's in the process of doing that now. We have enhanced training initiatives. We are also starting foreign language programs for our police officers so that they're able to communicate with our residents on the street. We have a new records management that Joe Fitzgerald set up again with the new software, with a lot of help from our IT department, Jim Franks. And we have new crime analysis reporting, as I stated before. One of the most important aspects that we received in our community is our new emergency notification system. And with the 911 board hiring back Curtis Nekovar, who's sitting in the audience, he's taken that and he has run with it. And the emergency notification system is now in operation. And it's actually worked in several occasions. That is a system that can not only be used to inform the residents about emergencies in specific areas or around the city, but it can also be used to notify you about upcoming events of importance to you in the community. One of the things that was very dear to my heart that I kind of insisted that we look forward to is some of the expansions of some of our programs, such as the Explorer Post, such as the Citizens Police Academy. And under Chief Ritz, he is taking a step forward to make sure that those are fortified. We're doing some revamping in the Explorer Post, and under Commander Manchetti and Commander Carmelita Terry, we're looking at what we need to do to refortify that Explorer Post. Neighborhood Watch, under Commanding Jim Cisetti. Neighborhood Watch is getting bigger and bigger, and he has a lot of ideas. one of his ideas was to bring in some of the people that are in Neighborhood Watch on his committee to give ideas on how we can get it better. And that's in the process. One of the things that I'm proud of is National Night Out. National Night Out was something that started quite a few years ago, and each year that we've been involved, we rise, so that we're still first in the state, but we've risen up in the nation too. So we're being recognized, and that's, again, our law enforcement. That's with cooperation from law enforcement from around the county. That's in cooperation with the state. And this year, we're having expanded cooperation from our soldiers. We met with the combined veterans just recently, and they're going to provide us with a lot more information about what's happening with our soldiers. Our traffic unit operations, just so you can see that we're not forgetting that. In 2010, the Illinois Department of Transportation awarded our traffic department $42,955 in an image grant. What that does is it allowed us to set up some of the safety spots that we've had around the city, seat belts, and what's resulted from that is we've written 697 citations for failure to wear seat belts, 35 for failing to secure children in a restraining seat, 148 for no insurance, 112 for having suspended licenses or no licenses, 11 drug arrests, and 10 fugitives apprehended for warrants. We were also able to impound the vehicles of those driving with suspended licenses, impound the vehicles of those driving with no licenses, as well as those who were arrested for those felony arrests with the drugs. So our police department is taking a very, very active role into this new century, and they are really stepping up enforcement. Again, I go to a lot of different places around the city, and I go to a lot of different communities with these other mayors, and we're being recognized by what our staff is doing, and our police and fire are at the top of the list, at the top of the list. I have mayors calling me from other town to ask how we're able to get such cooperation with our unions. And the reason being is because our guys and our girls are top notch, and they really care about serving this community, and they really care about what happens in this community. One of the brightest spots that I have been so excited about is our commercial development and our marketing. I have to tell you this. Our Berwyn Development Corporation is doing terrific. Our Berwyn Development Corporation has brought us such notoriety, so much so that we're able to make, although this was the Historical Preservation Commission, the Historical Bungalow Walk from the Historical Society, we made this old house for our bungalow walk. This is the kind of notoriety we're getting. We're getting notoriety in all different newspapers and magazines because people are stepping up and saying, why is it that Berwyn is getting all these businesses? Why aren't our communities getting this business? And that's because of our marketing program, and that's because of the aggressive efforts of our Berwyn Development Corporation. And I have to sit here and tell you that the board of directors is terrific, but if it wasn't for Tony Griffin as our executive director at that Berwyn Development Corporation, they had a great start with Brian Pabst, who I stole from them and brought over to the city, but Tony Griffin has just taken it to another level. And I cannot sit here and tell you that that's because of what we're doing here, although we've tried to make it very customer-friendly in cutting a lot of the red tape to get these businesses here. But Tony Griffin and his staff have been terrific. Based on what they've brought to town already, 142 new jobs have been created in Berwyn. Based on what's in the pipeline, there's approximately another 300 jobs coming to Berwyn with the new businesses. Almost 140,000 square feet of commercial space is already slated to be redeveloped. That doesn't include the areas that are still on the charts. Over $2.5 million were reinvested in Berwyn from the various TIFs. Another $10 million alone is allocated for future investment. Between public and private investment, almost $8,330,957 was invested in the TIF corridors in 2010. That's the highest amount in 4 years. Let's look at Ogden Avenue, one of our TIF districts. Luigi's Paisan Pizza, $4 million project, being built right now. The Kia dealership, which just had its grand opening, has been open approximately 3 weeks. The first new car dealership we've had in this town in ages. In the Depot District, the new Oliver Twist restaurant, which has brought an upscale clientele to our town and our Depot District. Cermak Road, the new Jimmy John's. The Super Block, which has some very, very interested parties right now to develop that Super Block with some upscale in the bank and a nice restaurant on the corner with a spec building in the middle. Those are still being negotiated as far as leases with the developer, so we're not at liberty to give you the names at this point. The new Jelly Jam restaurant, which should be opening real soon. The new Meyer, which all the construction equipment has been located, staged at the Cermak Plaza. The service merchandise is going to be knocked down. The owners of the Cermak Plaza, which have invested $10 million in remodeling that plaza, is going to be knocking down the building, putting in the pad, and Myers is going to build their store. The northeast corner of Harlem and Cermak. The city of Berwyn now owns that property, and we are working with a redevelopment agreement, which we've already approved with the developers of that area. They are in the process of negotiating their leases. Roosevelt Road, the new Ultramond restaurant, which is going to be opening soon. The Culvers, which you see is basically a shell, is under construction now. Capital improvements that we've done with TIF. Cermak Road streetscape, Vason Fairway improvements, the Roosevelt Road streetscape, which is now in its second year, the Route 66 Senior Wayside exhibits, and the Depot District fencing around the railroad. All these items were brought to you through TIF dollars and the hard work of the Berwyn Development Corporation. And that doesn't include the various other projects that have gone under the facade work, the various projects that people have done something to the front of their business to make them more appealing to get customers into town. Again, that is what has me so excited. The press releases about Meyer coming to town. The information regarding the top 10 in the nation for National Night Out. The information that we get in the newspapers about the citizens and the Berwyn staff working together to fight blight in our town. For once in this community, we are getting positive press. Positive press. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention what our IT department has done. We now have in our community a unified community calendar. Jim Franks went and met with representatives from all the school districts, park districts, and some of the organizations throughout town, and they all put together a unified community calendar so you can go on any of their websites and see what's happening throughout the whole town. We have a new Berwyn Recreation website. We have the new Berwyn Bungalow Preservation website, which Rich Bruin and Nasri Mansour have put together to allow people to remodel their bungalows here in Berwyn, which is also an offshoot of this publication. And they'll be able to provide some county tax credits. They're just about ready to put that program in action. It's this type of movement that I sit here today and tell you that I'm very proud and I'm very happy to be the mayor of Berwyn. And I sit here today also to tell you that it's the cooperation of everybody that I mentioned and many, many more, and most of all, the cooperation of our residents in making this a community that we are standing up to say, look, we're here, notice us. We are going to be better and better as we go along. So I want to thank you for your attention, and I'll be here for whatever questions that you might have. Thank you.